Hello and welcome to Mr. Marshall Flipped, and today we are talking about the reproductive system. Now, the reproductive system is the way that an organism produces offspring or children. There are two main types of reproduction. There's sexual reproduction and asexual reproduction. Now, sexual reproduction is what humans do. That's where you've got a mother and a father, they mate and they produce a child. Asexual reproduction is when there is just one parent and that parent produces essentially a clone of themselves. This is what cells do. This is also what things like starfish do, where they drop a limb and then they regrow the dropped limb, but the limb grows into a child that is genetically identical to the parent. We're going to focus on sexual reproduction though, because that's what humans do. Now, in human physiology, we have what are called chromosomes. These are the strands of DNA in our cells that determine what we're like, how we grow, all of that sort of stuff. There are 46 chromosomes in nearly every human cell. There are two cells, one in males and one in females, that do not have 46 chromosomes. They have 23. They are the sperm in males and the egg cell in females. And the reason they only have 23 is because when sexual reproduction occurs, the sperm fuses with the egg cell and those 23 chromosomes get combined into 46 total, or 23 pairs, to create a new person. And what happens is those are essentially randomly selected when the sperm or the egg cells are created from the 46 that each parent has. So me, as a child of my parents, only has half of my chromosomes from my mum and half from my dad. So 23 from my mum, 23 from my dad. The reason that this is important is because that's how we get our diversity. That's why I'm not identical to mum or identical to dad. I'm a little bit of both. I'm a bit of a mishmash. So through sexual intercourse, sperm enters a female body, and then we've got a chance that a sperm will fertilize an egg cell. And if that happens, what happens is the membrane around the egg cell changes to prevent any more sperm from entering it and fertilizing it. So it's one sperm, one egg. Once this membrane has formed around it, this egg is called a zygote. Now, we're going to go through well, not quite step by step, but through the main time periods in development of this egg cell. So the first one is from fertilization. Remember, fertilization is as soon as the sperm enters the egg cell and it changes that membrane, it becomes a zygote until it becomes bigger, like to a blastocyst. Basically what happens is it starts as a single cell, splits into two cells, then 4 cells, and slowly gets bigger and bigger. And you can see here we follow the timeline. We start over here, single cell, 2 cells, 4, 8, 16, and it's getting bigger and bigger, and from about here it starts changing shape, and we've got different types of cells we start to get a big cavity, and right up here, which we're going to talk about in a moment, is the placenta, and the blastocyst starts developing the placenta. The placenta is basically the attachment between the developing baby and the uterus wall, and that's what connects them, and that's what lets nutrients pass between the mother and the baby, and blood, and all of the things that that developing child needs. Now, from day 10 to 14, this is not very long, but this is where the blastocyst, the thing that we were talking about just before, actually attaches to the wall of the uterus. And what we can see here is we can see a big picture. I'm going to be referring to this as we go through, but this is basically how the fetus develops. So it starts as an embryo from day 14 to 3 weeks. The embryo is tiny. Okay, it's smaller than this. It's about the size of a pencil point, and it looks like a worm. But importantly, its heart starts to beat. That's really, really early. Within 3 weeks, this embryo has a heart. Okay, from 3 weeks to 6 weeks, it's about 5 millimeters long, half a centimeter. It has head and a tail, and it also has gills, which become a throat. It's also got, for arms and legs, it's got buds, a bit like a bud on a flower. It's the beginning of an arm, it's the beginning of a leg that will grow and get bigger. It's also got hands and webbed fingers. So you know how we've got a little bit of webbing between our fingers? They're much more pronounced, and they slowly get smaller as they grow. At 6 weeks, the embryo, the fetus, also has eyes. They're starting to develop. Between 6 weeks and 3 months, the brain starts to develop, the pain sensors start to develop, but there's no connection between these. So even though there's a brain, even though there's the nerves to feel touch, the fetus doesn't feel it yet because there's no way for that signal to get sent back to the brain. It has a human face at this point. Okay, it also loses its tail, and you can start to see bones. You can also start to see fingernails, and you can determine their sex. You can tell whether they're going to be a boy or a girl. From 3 months to 6 months, this is when the baby starts to, or the fetus starts to move. So movement can be felt by the mother. It's also developed hair. Mine's undeveloped again, but that's all right. It has hair. Its lungs develop, so it's ready to start breathing. It's not breathing yet because it's encased in liquid. And the brain connects with the body. So at this point, the fetus can feel pain. And they actually tested this, and you can see under ultrasound a fetus reacting to its environment. It's aware of what's going around. At 6 months, it's basically developed. There's still a few little bits and pieces going on, but at 6 months, if a baby is born, it has a chance to survive. It's a small chance. Like, lungs have just developed it. They still need more time to get stronger. There's lots of complications, and there's about a 14% chance of the fetus surviving. But at that point, it grows. It gets bigger. It gets stronger until birth, when the baby is born. And you'll notice in this last picture, the baby is turned around. It's actually born head first. So that's how a baby develops, from this tiny little thing all the way up to a baby, which is born and which parents can hold and is nice and healthy and starts to grow as a child. The other thing I really, really want to quickly talk about is twins. Now, twins come in 2 forms. They come in fraternal twins and identical twins, and they happen differently, and there's some different I guess features would be one way of putting it. So first we have fraternal twins. Now this is where during ovulation, instead of a female producing or releasing a single egg, 2 eggs are released. So these are 2 different eggs, which means they both have 2 different sets of those 23 chromosomes from mother. Now, if both of them are fertilized by 2 different sperm, what happens is you have 2 fertilized eggs, which can both implant in the uterus, and then they can both grow. But remember, 2 different sets of chromosomes from the mum, 2 different sets of chromosomes from the dad. When they meet, you have 2 different eggs, which means fraternal twins don't necessarily look like each other. They'll look similar, like siblings tend to look similar, but you'll notice here we've got a brother and a sister who are twins, but because they have different genetic information, they're different sexes, male and female. This is different to identical twins. So identical twins are when you have a single cell, a zygote, And when it first splits, instead of splitting into two cells that are connected, those two cells break apart, and then it starts splitting normally. If that happens, what happens is they can both implant in the uterus wall, and they can both grow into healthy children. But they came from a single zygote. So remember, we were talking about those chromosomes determine what we look like, how we are. That zygote split into two, which means they're identical. They have the identical genetic code, which means you end up with twins which look identical. They're going to be the same height. They're going to be the same sort of build, same skin color, eye color, hair color. Like, all of that is the same because all of the genetic code is similar. So today we looked through sexual and asexual reproduction. We looked at how an embryo develops, and we looked at twins. Thank you for watching.